Today, we're looking at a red ink by Papier Plume Red. Yep, red. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you are in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, wrote with it for the day, and then used it to take my notes for this video. In order to have some standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows us no color variation, and there is none. How about Tomoe River? No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. The medium, same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation. We didn't get any. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 6 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both, actually the scrubby for medium shows some color variation, although we're not getting it. The fine shows, or the extra fine shows none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this red flees from the water. It pushes its way all the way up. But it's just red. This is a good prime red. Now the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, it looks exactly the same. Had I not marked which chromatography was which, I wouldn't have been able to tell. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I am shocked at how well this ink did based on what happened in a chromatography, but it did very well. It makes me feel confident using it in a note-taking situation, which is still surprising because look at what happens with water, which is completely lifting this ink off the paper with only 30 seconds. That means pen flesh does nothing more than water did, and it means that 1/3 bleach solution, you're not going to need it, but it's going to obliterate it right off the paper. I test viscosity or flow by using a tilt test that I've linked in this video. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Papier Plume Red has a viscosity of 2.09, making it just a little bit wetter than normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Papier Plume Red has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making this a very fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Papier Plume Red, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. So I went with a nice turquoise in how it looks, not in name, I chose Private Reserve's Daphne Blue. The second writing sample is done on TWSBI, Leuchtturm 1917, and 20-pound copy paper. Here we're looking at TWSBI notebooks. Now we get no bleeding, very minor ghosting, but it is thinner paper. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Strangely, like on the Clairfontaine, here the medium is slightly lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. Leuchtturm 1917 journals with no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. Now the extra fine, way lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 5 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and there was none. How about 20-pound cheapo copy paper? So we know there's going to be a bunch of bleeding, and we know there's going to be a bunch of ghosting, but it does not touch the page underneath. While you can't use the back of the page, you're not destroying the next page. The medium, forgot the word, the medium, that's not the stub at the top. Medium has feathering, has spread, no halo sheen, and no shade. But if you write big, that's not too bad. The extra fine has a ton of feathering and a ton of spread. Again, write big, it's not as horrible, this would work. No halo sheen, no shade, only 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation, and we didn't get any color variation. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Papier Plume's Red? Most of my experience came with drier pens, but when I went to a wetter pen on Clairfontaine, that's when it looked really good. On a majority, I found this ink to be too pale for me. It was just too pale, it was too light. I really wanted a darker red. I think what I'm discovering is I prefer darker reds over vibrant or pale reds. This is a pale red, which makes it not for me. So what nib and pen is going to give the best writing experience? For me, where I don't want that pale red, a very wet, fine pen puts down a very pleasant tone. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.